any more than we have to. All right, guys. Welcome to episode 83 of 15 with Thy Buns. I am Yubi, joined by the namesake.
I am Buns. Hello. What is up, friends?
And as always, we got to start out with the top 5 for the points. In 5th, Ojai snuck right the F in there. In 4th, we have Neep. And then the top 3 have remained the same. Bitchney, Sandsmark, and Arcant just is going bonkers. I love it.
3 weeks in a row, running champion.
Right? Dude's like, you ain't taking this from me, motherfucker.
Watch the throne.
I'll go with my shout out because I just have one quick shout out, but a big one. All right. As you guys know, if you listened to last week's cast, we talked about kind of how disappointed we were with people stepping up and kind of putting not even necessarily just their money, but let's use it, putting their money where their mouth is as far as support for the Twink Cup. One person stepped up in a gigantic way, and I feel like at this point has taken over as like the main sponsor for the Twink Cup, and that is Diddle Me. He's can be found on Twitter at Extreme Pally, on the BIS forums, and also on the TI forums. I believe Diddle Me on both. But he just dropped over 100 bones to the Indiegogo campaign, and he is also willing to fund Twinks interested in participating in the Cup, and has about 40K to do so. So that is gigantic, and by far outside of, say, Merm, the biggest contribution that I have seen third party, let's say, make to the Twink Cup. So huge MF and shout out to Diddle for really going above and the fuck beyond on that one.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. That's actually, part of that is news to me. I didn't even know about the donation. I did know about his sponsorship on Bleeding Hollow, but both of that is just great for getting the news out there about the Cup and supporting the event. I mean, it's going to be a big deal, so, you know, shout out to Diddle there. My shout out's going to be this weekend I commentated for the free-to-play Twink tournament, the 2v2 tournament. My shout outs are going to the people that ran the tournament. It's going to Bop, Old Spike, WizKid, WizKid's brother, a few other people like Bend. I know a few other people behind the scenes that maybe deserve a little credit as well. The tournament ran really smoothly for the first real attempt at it, and it was a fun thing to be a part of, and I'm looking forward to getting involved in some more, because it looks like there's going to be more in the future here.
And that's what we're really going to talk about, so that's a good way to segue into this week's cast. So I'm not sure where you want to start, but I do have a question I want to ask you first. And that is, how did your experience commentating go through the whole thing?
Oh, it was fun. There were certain matches where I was definitely more enthusiastic and involved in the fight than others, but that kind of depended on the matchups and who was playing, etc. But overall, it was a pretty fun experience. The games, like I said before, I was really impressed how well the games were lined up. Like, if people were on and ready to go, they had the matches ready to go at the exact time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just like back to back to back, like games. And then in situations where there was a little adversity to face, people didn't show up, or there were some complications, technology issues, etc., they just dealt with it really well. Mm-hmm. And they dealt with it in a fast manner to keep the tournament going. So, yeah, honestly, just, you know, I was just a mere spectator, observing. And
so, like, do you
comments.
have any insight? Like, if there's someone else interested in organizing a tournament, is there anything that you kind of gleamed from what they were doing behind the scenes that might benefit someone else trying to do this? Like some of the problems and solutions that they worked through?
I don't know everything, to be honest, but one thing that I think is the most difficult thing to understand and to handle in a free-to-play tournament is grouping. On free-to-plays, I mean, it's not like free-to-plays can group themselves, and a lot of times you'll have teams that, you know, one person's on one round, one's on the other. And then on top of that, you have to sync it war game style, and they did it through Spectator, so they must have had themselves on pay-to-plays with each other on Real ID, and then they were the leaders, and they queue it through Real ID. I think that's how they did it, to my knowledge, because you have to be able to, with the add-on plugin, be able to plug in players' BattleNet names to initiate the war game with the leaders. So honestly, I think it's like a lot of unnoticed work to make it go so smoothly. That's why I think it deserves a lot of credit that is or is not being get because it's just a lot of work. And anything free to play and you're organizing it is a lot of work. It's gonna be more work than anything else. Because
there's inherent barriers that you just said. I mean, what do you do when the people playing can't group? Well, you got to get some other people to take the time to figure out how to coordinate to get all the goddamn motherfuckers together. Yep. And that's not always easy. Actually, I don't know if it's ever easy.
And I think the rules too for the tournament were like, for the first time, I think they were set really well. Like,
let's go over those then. What were the rules that were in place for the tourney?
Woo!
Bless ya!
Okay, well, I'm going off a little bit off the top of my head, to be honest with you right now. The few things I liked in particular is that they didn't necessarily ban a class, but they did. One thing that they did say was not allowed in the tournament was like Ferals and Boomkins couldn't ferocious bite.
How do you? Okay.
Well, I mean, if like someone tracks a ferocious bite, I mean.
It's just that easy. Seems like someone feeling a little adventurous, like maybe they won't notice this time.
Oh, I'm sure if like it's pretty hard to miss like a 2K bite and then just quickly go into combat log, screenshot, DQ kind of thing.
That is a good point. It's like, wait, where the fuck did my health bar go? I thought we weren't ferocious biting. Oh, that's because that dude decided to ignore the rules. Well, you're banned. Goodbye.
The other thing that I think was how they organized the tournament is they had it in a round-robin way, which really is not very common anymore, especially in a World of Warcraft scene where every team pretty much played every other team except for the case of two teams that just time-wise, they just couldn't find a way to match them up. They just couldn't be available at reasonable times, and they even dealt with that in a pretty nice manner. I just think that how they set it up is like, the round robin, everyone plays everyone, and you get 1 point per win. Now, let's say Team A is playing Team B, you're going to play the best of 3 games against that team. But let's say Team A wins the first game and then goes on to win the second game. They're going to get a point per win, so they get 2 points, and at that point they've already taken the best of 3, so the third game won't even be played. So what that means is, let's say, in a tournament where you're scoring and you're getting a point per win, and it's best of 3, if a team 2-0s you, you're doing a lot of damage to that other team's ability to gain points because they literally got 0 points out of that matchup.
Yeah.
It's not like the third game's played in that case scenario. You'd have to split 1-1 at the start of the 3 to get points. So in my opinion, it made it a little bit interesting. I'm not sure if I think I like that rule. I think it makes it interesting. It makes it puts a little more pressure on the line for the other team to win the second game. I thought it was a kind of cool rule. And then going off of that, off the preliminary rounds, which happened this weekend, the teams with the top 4 point totals move on to the semifinals, which is going to be Wednesday or tonight when you guys are hearing this, this week. So I believe the 11th of February.
Yeah, that looks right.
I am probably going to be commentating on it with Biggie, unless schedule issues happen. I'm
going to try and listen to that. I want to hear you two just get on there and riff together. I think that should be a awesome pairing.
Yeah. No, it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. I most likely will be there. I just got the update right now. Just got to double check, make sure it works with my schedule, but it looks like it's going to work out. So, it's nice to see. I keep saying I really like how they did round robin, but it really does show like what players and comps worked out the best and had the most success over a conglomeration of games versus like, hey, you know what, our team we're really good against this team, or our team really counters that team and we knocked them out. It's a little different than that, like you could have a good matchup and move on to the next round, but this is really like, this comp all around does really well, or these players make this comp work really well.
And also, it seems, since you're doing that round-robin style, more to elaborate on what you just said, it's if you get matched with, say, your counter comp in round 1, you're really in a tough spot. But if you're doing the round-robin thing, maybe you get 2-0'd that first round,
Right.
but you can make up for it in the following because you play a little bit more favorable comps, or maybe you're just a little bit better than those other comps, so you can kind of compensate for just that.
Compensate versus comps.
Yeah, compensation.
But yeah, no, that's just one of the things that made the tournament unique, and I think it gave people an opportunity to really get a better idea for limits of comps. And that's maybe where I would jump into.
All right.
The first thing, so I was commentating 2 of the days. I really got to see a lot of the games. I even watched most of the matches from the 3rd day.
Mm-hmm.
So the first things first is you have your who's the first 4 teams that are going to the next round. So I'm not gonna get the team names right by any means, but
I have the comps in front of me if you want me to read them off for you.
I know them off the top of my head.
Okay.
So the top comp was Warrior Resto Shaman by a significant amount. They took to first place in the preliminaries. Second place was Warrior Disc Priest. Third place was Windwalker Disc Priest. And fourth place was Ret Paladin Disc Priest. So we see a lot of things in common there, but at the same time there are some differences between the comps.
Mm-hmm.
Personally though, those all seem like pretty strong comps, but there's one thing that I noticed, and I made a post on this on the BisNation forums a few days ago, was that some of the top comps that are making it into the preliminary rounds, or into the semifinals rather, from the preliminary rounds, the top 4 teams weren't necessarily the best 4 teams that played well. And what I mean by that, I worded that poorly.
Take another shot at it. Don't Pete Carroll it.
The top 4 teams going into the semifinals were not necessarily the teams that played best in the preliminary rounds. Okay. What I mean by that is I felt like there was a few teams that didn't make it during to the playoffs, but they just played their comp so well. It was impressive and stood out to me. Some of them overlap. I said the Warrior Shaman, the Warrior Priest played well, and the Windwalker Disc. I was really surprised, actually, how successful of a comp that can be. Windwalker Priest kind of blew me
that
out of the
was, like, when I was looking at that, I mean, it seemed... Ret wasn't a big surprise there, but I mean, if you want to go for outliers, you basically have the Ret and the Windwalker. And the Windwalker was the one that kind of took me off guard. It was like, I'm glad to see someone kind of switching up the general thought of Rogram or meta or whatever it is you want to, or however you want to define it.
Yeah, I mean, they just played really well. That was probably the team, even though they didn't come in first, they came in 3rd overall. That was probably the team where I was like, wow, they really showed the limits to that comp. So the Windwalker Disc team stood out to me a lot. And then one team that didn't even make it that I thought played exceptionally well was Hunter Resto Shaman. And it's just the fact that they just don't have enough damage in their comp to get kills. But they just technique-wise and skill set-wise, they're playing really well against some comps that should have been decimating them, and they gave them some good games. So it was impressive in that aspect.
Well, I think that's one of the cool things, and when everyone's watching, to take away from it, so you can see, or someone just has that preconceived notion of, oh, that can't work. It's like, no, it really can. You just have to figure out how to maximize the class and play it to its potential, and especially figure out how it synergizes with the comp you're given, and possibly find a comp that it can work better with. Say if you wanted to do the Mistweaver or the Hunter sort of thing. Or not Mistweaver, I'm sorry, Windwalker.
I think what this first tournament did overall was it gave an estimated ceiling for where this tournament can go.
And by your means, how do you feel? Where do you feel the ceiling is? I mean, do you think it's high and this can become
Currently, I think that the ceiling for how the tournament was ran was extremely high. I think the tournament was efficiently done, efficiently run through. Games kept happening. If there were issues that came up, they were addressed relatively fast. And for something that's not company organized, it's just community organized, I think that's really good. And the fact of actual gameplay, I think that there were teams that came out and showed that they have the capability of playing, and there were other teams that came out and I felt dropped the ball. And I also felt like that there were some team comps where I was sitting there like commentating. I'm like, man, you know what? They're just continuously making bad decisions again and again and again. It's like I feel like some teams had a really hard time adapting as the games went on.
As a commentator, what was it like for you? And is there anything that you've kind of taken away from that to try and improve on how you do it? Or maybe, like, how do you deal with it when you see, like, oh my God, that person really used a shear on that, or that person hodged there? Like, what is your process through that?
For me as a commentator, it's more like say first, think second. Because I'm just saying what's really happening, what's going on first, and then, like, you know, I can be like, you know what, that probably wasn't the best shear there, or you know what, that was actually an appropriate time to use your CS, etc. But there were some teams where it was like consistently, the one thing that was teasing me the whole tournament is initially the Rep Priest team when they started playing. This was the one team that I was really following, particularly because we had high hopes. Kans had really high hopes in his prediction. He thought Rep Priest was going to win the tournament. And I think it is a really strong comp. But they'd make like really good. They made maybe some of the best adjustments out of any team. Like at first, I thought that they were struggling a bit, and they made some good adjustments against teams, some of the lesser teams. But when they got against the better teams in the tournament, like Resto Shaman Warrior, Disc Priest Warrior, Windwalker Priest, you know, they just, even though they were able to make some adjustments against some of the lesser teams or more favorable comps, because they weren't as decisive against the better players and making those decisions, it really came back to hurt them. And I was just sitting there, and it's like continuously they're making the same mistakes over again.
So what were some things that you noticed?
Well, first things first, I mean, how Ret Priest works at level 20 is you kill on Hodge. And in the comps against, like, Resto Shaman Warrior, you know, you gotta Hodge the Resto Shaman and kill the Warrior, but you don't want to Hodge the Resto Shaman until the Warrior is about 2/3 half health, because otherwise you're not going to force his trinket, or you're not going to force defensives from the Warrior, at least. So that to me was the first issue, because, you know, sometimes they'd show signs of like, hey, wow, that was a really good Hodge, and like one of the games they got a great opener in Ruins of Lordaeron, Hodge the Shaman, put a ton of pressure out, forced trinkets and AGMs from both players in the opener, and then after that, it's like, they didn't even use their Hodge until the Shaman had his trinket back up again. And I'm sitting there like, what is your thought process? Like, you have to understand that, like, you know, like, your comp that you're playing, this is how you're going to have success on your comp. You got to be able to utilize that. Otherwise, teams, like the better teams, are just going to take advantage of you. And from a commentating standpoint, it would have been a little more enlightening and a little more entertaining for me not only to watch but commentate if some of the players had been able to figure out their strats and really tone into adjustments between their games, because I felt like there were some teams where it was like they made good adjustments, and other teams that made adjustments or they couldn't continue making adjustments. Another team that off the top of my head excuse me, sorry. Another team that off my head was kind of a little frustrating to watch as well was the Enhanced Disc team. And I was coming into this like, you know, I think Enhanced Disc could be like kind of a low-key, like pretty solid team, but they really struggled in the tournament. And, you know, a lot of things, one thing that I think a lot of people might not initially realize is that if you're running with a Priest on whatever comp you're running with, so much depends on your Priest play. Like, it's actually unreal.
So do you mean, like, expand on that a little bit, just on the fact that the Priest is not only responsible for healing, but assisting in applying pressure, or is it more of a positioning thing, or what?
The whole ball of wax. Like, really, like, Priests have the versatility of being able to heal pretty quickly with Penance and Bubble to catch people up. They have fairly good line of sight with Bubble, and they have guys as well to get themselves a free cast, etc. And they also have the ability to just turn up DPS and spread damage. So some of the Priests that were really like utilizing the full spread of the comp, you saw like Priests like Bop, Ultranum, and even Blue-Eyed Sweet sometimes would show signs of it, where they're just playing so aggressive that it gets the other team behind, and they're forcing the other team's healer to really have to play defensive because of how much pressure they're turning out. Like, sometimes, especially against when it was a DPS priest versus DPS priest, because honestly in this tournament, which is a little upsetting, no one ran double DPS. I thought someone would run double DPS in 2s.
Why do you think that is? Just playing it safe, or just didn't feel it'd be viable?
I don't know. I'm going to come back to that. It's
Okay.
too, so you have, like, your disc DPS versus disc DPS, and it was like most of the games, it's like whatever team's disc got aggressive earlier won the game. Because the other disc was just having to play behind. Like, it was like whatever team was able to put in the more offensive penances were like winning the games, the majority of the games at least. Which makes sense, but I mean, you still have to take it upon yourself to, you know, use your moves offensively to try to catch up damage. Like, specifically, I thought Carr did a really good job against... Carr was Ultra Numb. Did a really good job at playing the disc and the disc Windwalker comp because he was just syncing up his damage so well with his Windwalker, and you only have a slotted window of time when you can kill during that, so you really need to have that penance for when he fists and that Holy Fire to really end the burst, and like he was doing a very good job on that. Because that's really how that comp works, you know, you kill on a fist stun.
Do you think it's like, say, Carr, is he someone that's more seasoned arena side with a priest? Because I could just, as someone that's played a healer a lot, sometimes it can be nerve-wracking to forego the heals on a teammate and go for the pressure on the kill. You're like, oh crap, all right, I'm going to go ahead and do this, but if this doesn't work, it's really going to put us in a hole, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to compensate for it. So is it people just not properly being able to read the situation, or maybe not having the experience?
I think there was a mix of what you just said. There's just, like, not enough experiences in arenas, and, like, there's just a lot of, you know, mixed up approaches and situations where, you know, I'll go back to that Enhanced Shaman team. It's like, I felt like if that Priest on the Enhanced Shaman team would have been playing more aggressive, that team would have had a lot more success because, you know, your Shaman's going to benefit way more if your Priest is able to put out damage, but when your Priest... See, there were a lot of times where I'd look around and see what was going on commentating, and, like, there was the top Priest from the lower Priest in the tournament where it was very simple to identify, and the fact that, you know, the top priests were pretty much using every global they could to do something. And that could be as simple as, you know, dotting a welly, dotting a pet, dotting target, dotting healer, healing themselves, dropping a defensive penance, bubbling. But there were also healers that were just straight healing. And they'd be like, you know, they'd bubble, flash heal, use penance defensively, and then, you know, yeah, maybe they throw a dot or something, but they're not looking to throw their smites in offensively, holy fires, or penances offensively, and it made a huge difference between the teams that had success and didn't. Because there were so many teams. I think, if I'm not mistaken, 6 teams ran Disc Priest. I could be wrong on that, but that sounds right off the top of my head.
And how many teams, I guess just to put that in perspective, how many teams were in the tournament?
To put that in perspective, there were 8 teams in the tournament.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so 3/4 of the teams ran a Disc Priest. And then the other 2 ran Shamans, and that was another thing that me and Kunz were talking about. Like, oh my god, like, no one ran a Resto Druid or a Holy Paladin? Like, we were surprised about that. Like, that was maybe more surprising than no one running a double DPS.
Well, I have to ask you on that, because in all of the talks that we've had, I've heard you say, like, maybe a Holy Pally can work in, like, the right comp or played properly. But there's not been a whole lot of favorable reviews on the class. So why does it surprise you that Holy Pally in particular was shelved for the comp?
It surprises me. Well, I'm going to first say that when I usually talk to you about arenas, I'm usually talking about 19. And there's some significant differences between Holy Paladin between 19 and 20. They get Dispel and Denounce. The double
Ds.
The double Ds are so big. Like, you have Hodge and Denounce. Like, you can just, like, stop someone from critting on you and keeping damage low and assist damage. Even though their heals are not that great. Like, I could have seen, like, a team run, you know, something like, I don't know, like Rogue Paladin, or something as simple as, like, Paladin Warrior, just something that does a lot of damage, and you play with the Hodge cooldown. Because I don't think it's unrealistic to live, even if you have to pop Bubble till second Hodge, with a Warrior. I don't know. I was surprised that people didn't run Paladin, but actually more so than that, I was surprised no one ran a Wrestler Druid, because like Wrestler Druids were allowed to use Ferocious Bite, and they do like reasonable healing.
Yeah.
So I was surprised that no one tried a comp like that going into the tournament.
That seems like it would have been more of, say, offensive pressure mode for the resto as well, or is that...
Yeah. I don't know though. I mean, it's like there were some things that in the tournament we got a good idea for that gave us some representation of like, hey, some of these things work, some of these things we could have done better, but we have some sort of feel for it. We'll probably get a better feel for the top comps going into the semifinals, which are coming up on Wednesday, to reiterate that. And I'm hoping that the teams in the top four, some of them look back at their games, because I mean they're all on Twitch at this point, on twitch.tv/swagcleaver.
That's actually a very interesting thing you bring up there, where with tournaments have done in the past, it hasn't been, not only is every game available to be watched, but every game has a running commentary from an independent perspective. It's not just listening to the conversations between teammates. It's like, all right, listen, I was there. I know what the hell we said. But they can hear you and whomever you were commenting with and Biggie and who he was commenting with, and they can kind of use that for added insight into possibly what they can improve and also what they did well and what they should continue.
Very true. I think people can take a lot of insight out of that. Just even simply just by going back and watching the footage. You don't even have to have the volume on. Just like look at some of the things that went right and wrong. There's definitely some teams I think could extremely benefit from that. Even though they're top four, I mean, especially when you get top four, it's little things that matter too. So little things that you do wrong could maybe make a difference if you identify them before going into your matchups.
Before we move on, since we were kind of on healers, Good brings something up in the stream chat. He said Mistweaver is a strong healing class, better than Druid and H-Pally. What are your thoughts on that, and do you feel that it was strange not seeing a Mistweaver?
I don't think it was strange not seeing a Mistweaver in 2s. I honestly would think it's still a little strange to see him in 3s. Here's the thing with Mistweavers, because he's right. Mistweavers straight healing are probably the best healer, to be honest. 1920 doesn't really matter. Like, their heals are pretty absurd, unless you have, like, a shaman that's really on their purge.
Just bombing.
The issue with Mistweavers is they don't offer any sort of CC, hard CC on healers, or DPS. They're easy to be trained, and they don't do any damage, like none. Like you have to swap, you have to take a global to go punch people, and then a global to get back. And I don't even want to like have to tell you what could happen in 2 globals of you like not healing.
Yeah.
So there's just some serious issues with that, and especially in a 2v2 setting where it's just you and a partner. A lot of times, you'll get the CC or you'll get that line of sight issue just for a few seconds, and it'll take your DPS and your healer to contribute to get the kill. Mistweaver's not going to be that healing class that can contribute the DPS in those situations.
Goddamn stance. Effing up the whole rogram for the Mistweavers. Not that they ever really had a considerable amount of DPS output to begin with, but it's really adding insult to injury at that point, it sounds.
I guess going off of that, we'll go back to, like, why didn't any teams run double DPS? And to be completely honest, I don't know. What do you want me to say? Like, there's so many double DPS teams that actually work, it's unreal. I think it goes back to maybe what you said originally, where it's like teams maybe just, like, weren't comfortable running them, or a lot of the double DPS teams, because there are some teams that you get double hybrid, and you do have multiple opportunities, but a lot of the double DPS teams, like, you only have one opportunity. Like, if you don't do it the first try, you lose, kind of.
And by one opportunity, you mean that one opportunity for the kill shot?
Like, I think, like, see, I think a good team for 2v2 that would only have one chance at doing it, but could win, would be, like, Rogue Mage. Like, legitimately, Rogue Mage could do really good, but you only have one shot at killing them.
So that seems, I mean, just if you have one chance and you have to line everything up correctly, it would just seem, from a layman's perspective, that the skill cap on that might be significantly higher, since you kind of don't have a reset button.
Yeah. No, definitely, but, like, It'd be a great. You run mage rogue, frost mage rogue, and you can take the DPS out of the game and train the healer, or vice versa, and land a kill, whichever you think would be more efficient in your specific matchup. You'd basically need to kill the thing in like 10 seconons. But
well,
like,
let's play hypothetical for a second. Let's say you're playing the rogue mage, and you're going up against the warrior sham. I think that was a top team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, what would the play-by-play be for that double DPS team to kind of get in there and take the win, just so people can kind of get a feel for how that might play out?
Okay, so what you would have to do playing rogue mage is you'd have to wait for them to come out. You just have to be stingy about it. You'd have to line on a pole or something and wait for them to come out, which makes sense. If they're going to sit back there, that's fine. To be completely fair, if it went to dampening, it'd be in your favor, so let them be stingy. Or be stingy about it. You're going to want to wait for that shaman to poke out at a reasonable rate. Probably what you're going to want to do is sap the shaman, and then have your mage start pushing up, and either sap the warrior where your mage starts pushing up before he gets in combat charge range, and then open the shaman, or have a sheep and then open the shaman. And then what you're going to want to do is just train the shaman into the ground, and he's probably going to try to he's probably going to try to dispel his partner. And his partner's going to trinket, and then that's the Frost Mage's job to get that off of him. And even if the Frost Mage gets hit a little bit, they can use their block offensively to get rend off or something like that.
Yes.
And you have 2 kicks for the Shaman. So there is opportunity to make that comp work. But, like, even if you kill you have to play really well. Like, you can't, like, that's what I'm saying. But, maybe a little more user-friendly comp. We didn't even see something like, double hybrid. We didn't see, like, Ret Enhance, which I think is a good comp, or, like, BM Enhance, or BM. We didn't even see BM.
That is something I wanted to ask you, and I wasn't sure if that's because the toolkit between 20 and 29 is so vastly different, or, again, it was like people just maybe didn't feel comfortable going out there for the first tourney run, or maybe there just weren't the players available to get that comp working.
I think Brewmaster Priest would be just so
dirty.
Much damage. Yeah, really would. Because your BM's tanky, your Priest is like can play offensive with them. You have an off heal, and it's not like you have an interrupt or anything like that unless you're playing Horde, but you do just have this like insane damage. That's just every 8 seconds you're going to be taking half your health kind of thing.
And what about, you've been stressing mobility a lot in the past. I mean, what about the Lust for Priest or even the Monk if necessary with the 2 roles? I mean, would that also go pretty far in assisting that comp?
Definitely, and that's one thing that really impressed me with the Windwalker Disc team this weekend is how well they use their Lust, doing things like Guy's Bubble Lust. Like, I was like, wow, like, that was, like, impressive. Like, that's, like, Guy's Bubble Lust, the Priest out of there. Like, he's out of the game kind of thing. So, there's definitely room to explore Lust for sure. It's the difference between using it on a Windwalker and a BM is BM, you'd probably use it to keep pressure up, but on a Windwalker, you're probably going to use it to peel out, which is weird. But that's probably the difference between the 2 classes there.
I have to say, you have me excited to check out the Windwalker Priest combo in Wednesday's games. It sounds like they're doing some pretty cool things and really maximizing what that comp can do.
Definitely. And there's a few classes too where it's just like, it kind of sucks. Like, with the restrictions that they had, it's like who's actually going to want to play Feral and who's actually going to want to play Boomkin. But, like, at the same time, it's like, yeah, I understand if they did allow that, like, how it wouldn't be fun. Because you just have your Boomkin Star Surge, Wild Charge him, and 5-point bite, and something dies. Or vice versa, you have a Feral Druid that's just going to hit harder, that can, like, take 3/4 to an entire health bar out in a crit bite, so...
Let me ask you this, though. I think one of the cool things, and I'm not sure if you agree with this or not, is that when these sort of games are organized by the community, it's not just let's throw whatever in there and it doesn't matter how games play out. Let's run something ridiculously overpowered. Blizzard made it acceptable. Let's do it. It's all right. These are the cards that we've been given by Blizzard. How can we make the best hand for everybody to create sort of an even playing field?
No, yeah, I think this tournament was a great representation, and there's been events in the past where the people who have run such events just have a good idea for rules, and I think that was a necessary rule. But it does, like, you didn't see any like DPS druids in the tournament, so I mean, it definitely like shows like no one's gonna want to play that now because of that. But I think it was a good rule for the meta that's currently going on right now. But
yeah, it's almost like, is that necessarily a bad thing, though? I mean, to the detriment of the entire tournament, do you want to let that one ability just shine?
No. Just, I don't know, just something I wanted to touch on, I guess. One thing that was also surprised me is, like, the lack of CC classes. Like, I was surprised there weren't more mages. And I'm also surprised at, like, I thought the Mage Priest team should have done better, but they were having some issues out of WoW to even get to the games, so that was an issue before.
Well, that might go a long way to describe the difficulties faced in game. Then,
but mages offer so much control; it's unreal and consistent damage, not big damage whatsoever, but consistent. I was just surprised you didn't see like any lock, and you only saw like one mage. I don't know, like it was a little bit surprising to me in that aspect. I think that, we've kind of been touching on classes and comps and everything, but maybe, I think this has shown that there is a big interest for people playing and watching these kind of tournaments and events right now in free-to-play. And I'm going to say this, too, and I know somewhere out there in fucking Sweden land where Nikosi somewhere lurking on his iPod because his computer is broken and shattered, but free-to-play really is probably the most balanced low-level war games and arenas that have to be offered right now.
Well, this is something else we always go back to. It seems like enchants are one of the most make or break things for a lot of the brackets, and Crusader, and I guess to a lesser extent Elemental Force and maybe a few others. I mean, they really take a strong class and just push it to a point where, holy fuck, dude, are you serious?
Yep.
And then if you're free to play, you remove that enchant from it. And I guess especially in the case of BMs, where I was talking earlier about the toolkit and stuff, you don't have to deal with things like guard,
right?
Which is good for anyone that plays in 29s. Guard, yeah, it may or may not be a ridiculously stupid, brand new health bar every, I forget what the cooldown. Yeah, 30 seconds. I mean, that's insane.
No, but, like, free-to-play, it really is probably the most balanced thing that's always bugged me about free-to-play in the past. But, let me turn that around. Let's say the good thing. The tournament gives a setting where it's only free-to-plays that are playing. It's a war game tournament. So that means you're only going against free-to-plays. You're not playing 29s. You're not doing any of that. And for me, that's the biggest turn-off of playing skirmishes at 20s, because I hate going against 29s. It's just such a waste of time.
Yeah.
Like, if 29s lose, like, in almost any situation to 20s, it's just like, how do you lose? Like, in most situations, but like, I don't know. It's just like in an all free-to-play tournament where there's no win chance, it's just free-to-play gear, everything like that. The quality of play is just, it's a great level. The meta's really good to field tournaments like this. There's a lot of things that can work. And it's so balanced that if you're playing comps to the top ability that you can, or close to the top ability, there's comps that will just counter comp. Like, even in 2s. I mean, it's probably more relevant in 3s, but you have, comps that block out certain comps. But then you start regressing on skill cap and, like, what teams are doing, and that can kind of be, maybe hidden from view. But when you actually see some of the top teams play, it's like, wow, it's like, in actuality, if like that team can't win, like unless it's just like they really screw up or they get RNG Lord. But I don't know. I really like the free-to-play scene. I think going into the next tournament, I hope they actually do another 2s one again before they do 3s. I just think that there's more 2s comps to be seen, and I think it's just easier for people to sign up on 2s again before they jump to 3s.
Well, also it's just, I mean, what are you pulling from as far as your player pool? It almost seems like just for the sake of having a higher number of teams, it might even be advantageous to stick with twos for a tournament of two, get the interest built, get the player base established, and then let's go threes, because you're basically taking three teams and making them two if you kind of step up, into threes as opposed to doing 2v2.
And like I said, I just think that there's so many comps yet in twos that have really been able to be seen that would still make for another another one or two 2v2 tournaments to be really enjoyable to watch, just because I think that there's so many other comps that haven't been presented yet.
Well, do you have any that you can think of off the top of your head?
Yes, I can, but I'm not going to say them because I'm married.
All right, what, you holding that? All right, well, don't say the one you're doing, but can you think of any beside that?
We've talked through some today. It's like we didn't see any double. I think that there's some double hybrid teams that can work. I think that there's some teams where you have a one chance kind of thing and you can make it work. And then I also think that there's comps like you can match up, a DPS with a Resto Druid or H-Power.
Well, what I was really hoping was I was going to see if you wanted to give a Warlock team that would work.
A Warlock team?
Mm-hmm. Because you said you were kind of surprised you didn't see a lock or anything like that earlier. You said lock or mage.
A Warlock team in twos. No, I did say that, and then I just gave it a bad
You're like, why didn't I see a lock? And they're like, well, because it fucking sucked, dude. Why would anyone do it?
Warlock in twos would have to play with a priest, or maybe a Resto Druid. Maybe you could play Demo with a Resto Druid, but you'd have to play with a healer that's going to do a considerable amount of damage. I don't think you can play. I think you could play Destruction, but you're better off playing Demo, even though you have less burst, more sustained damage. But the fact that you have the pet control and the pet CC at level 20 is a big difference from 19 as well. So it gives it some more CC options and a little more flexibility on that to lock out healers or pull DPS. So I don't know. I think that there's a few comps that can work. I don't think Warlock is a class that's going to work with another DPS unless it's maybe a Ret. Maybe you
just
could do it with
off heal.
Maybe you could do it with a Ret or maybe a BM. I don't think there's too many off heals that are gonna be able to do the job, just because they're gonna get too behind. But I just think that there's a nice floor right now for free to plays, and the meta. Honestly, there's a lot of things that can work. The nice thing too that we haven't touched on that I think is something, it's a lot of people are sitting here maybe asking yo, maybe I do want to get involved. And the nice thing is, come 6.1, it's going to be so easy to make free-to-plays. Yes.
Why don't you fill in everybody on this whole...
Am I accurate in saying that, your pay-to-play on 6.1, if you're linked on a pay-to-play, your free-to-play account will be able to take the BOAs and create BOAs on a free-to-play account?
I believe that's how it's going to work, but I think also something that's interesting is how the veterans thing is going to go into play. Because you could have potentially an account that's linked to a paid account that you just kind of stop paying for. And it's good up to level 20 with whatever it's got, basically.
I think that in tournament play and stuff like that, you'll see some serious restrictions start coming out in 6.1 because, some accounts are going to have access to the helm, neck, legs, ring, etc. Some of the things that you can't get necessarily on a.
And that'll kind of break that whole everything we just talked about as far as enchants and all that shit.
No. But what I'm saying is I think from a free to play standpoint in events like this, you'll have all that banned. I think you won't have helm, you won't have neck. You won't have anything that can't be obtained on a free-to-play account, is my guess for going into these tournaments coming up. And certainly, no enchants like that as well, too. But I think that, how this is going to work, to my understanding, is basically, you log on... this is just any account. You log onto your account now, and you have a BOA tab, and you take the BOA out of the tab, and it basically creates the BOA right there. So the BOAs that you already have, the BOAs you already have are going to be wherever they are in your tunes, and they're going to have all the enchants you want. But let's say you're on another tune, and you're like, you know what, I need some BOAs on this guy. I don't really have the enchants I want, so I don't need to send them over, so why don't I just make some? That's basically what it is. And you like make BOAs by going into your tab. That's what it's going to be like on free-to-play, so in the sense that that's avoiding the whole enchant thing on a free-to-play level, but on a veteran account level, you are right. There might be some issues that come up where people just turn off their subscription.
Mm-hmm.
So a little smoky water there. We're not quite sure what's going to happen yet, but the moral of the story is that it's going to be so easy for you to...
The moral.
No, really. The moral of the story is it's going to be so easy to make free-to-plays now. Like, even if you're on a straight free-to-play account and you just have a conglomeration of BOAs across all your tunes, and you're like, you know what? I want to get involved in the war games. First off, if you want to get involved in the war games and tournaments like this, I would highly recommend going to Airy Peak. Whether it be Alliance or Horde, I think is irrelevant. Going to Airy Peak, though, I think is going to be a big thing now again, especially come 6.1 with all these events coming up. I just think that you're going to want to have tunes on Airy Peak for the arenas and the war games, and I think pre-mades and events going on, stuff like that. It's just more beneficial now that free-to-plays can queue Wargame Warsong Gulch and Battlegrounds and arenas. Why not? Like, what do you have to lose at that point? It takes, with BOAs now, it takes, what, an hour to get to 20. Like, just, legitimately an hour if you have BOAs.
We've had, I mean, this is for 29, but just to kind of put it in perspective, like Frenchie or Dom get pissed if someone isn't 29 in 3 hours because they'll just run them. And we've had people 29 best in slot, and this is at 29. So just think about, with the new additions and benefits coming to free-to-plays, how quickly you can get best in slot, subtract 9 levels, and don't worry about enchants.
So for me, like, I'm really excited about that because I have 2 free-to-play accounts. We're just on my free-to-play account alone, not including my pay-to-play account. I have a ton of BOAs. And one weird thing that I'm really excited about is on both my free-to-play accounts, I have Dread Pirate Ring, which I actually don't have on my pay-to-play account. So that's going to be kind of funny
crazy.
In the aspect I'm going to be getting that on my pay-to-play account. That's so weird, I think. But there's definitely, it's going to be really nice for re-rolling tunes and making tunes going into the future. Just it's going to be so easy. Not only is the leveling process going to be easier, but you don't have to grind out DMF anymore to get the best in slot BOAs. I mean, it's just going to be irrelevant.
Speaking of Dark Moon Fair, they're introducing a racing game. Did you see that?
Say that again?
They're adding a racing game in 6.1.
I did see that. That's going to be like, what, 7 dailies a day? So that's going to up like your total... Because technically, I think you can still do DMF 8 days if you do it right. That's a lot of tokens. And I don't know if I mentioned this on a cast or not before, but one thing that I realized on a pay-to-play account is you can literally do those dailies, and the boxes you get from the dailies, they're not soul-bound. Like, you can send them all to one tune and have all the tickets be on one tune, or sell them on the auction house, etc., etc. Does that make sense?
It does. I didn't know you could do that, though.
I mean, from a free-to-play level, you can't do that. But on a pay-to-play level, if you're getting, like, BOAs or stuff, or you want an easy way, cheap way to get BOAs, do your dailies every day. Just send them to one tune. It's really easy.
Oh, shit. Pro tip, Dark Moon Fair, HB style.
Yeah.
All right. So what else we got here?
I don't have too much more to say about the tournament. I really pretty much got all my thoughts out, to be honest, unless you can think of something that maybe we missed or you wanted to add something on. I think that, you know, final note, like, I think there's going to be another tournament going to the future. I'm looking forward to the finals that are coming up on a Wednesday. That's pretty much all. That's where I'm at right now, man. You know, just good old free-to-play fun right now.
Well, shit, then. Why don't you slap a nice little bow on this, and we'll start beer and BGs. Or I guess I'll start beer and BGs.
Alright, D. Wade made a pretty classy excuse to excuse himself from the All-Star game today.
What was that? I missed that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I actually was reading and did some podcast listening on basketball today, but I did not catch any of this.
D. Wade said that basically, well, wow, this is a longer bow than I wanted it to be. Awkward, but D. Wade said D. Wade said in a nutshell, he's like, I'm not healthy enough to play in the All-Star game, and it's not fair to me to playing the All-Star game when I've been playing for the Heat, and I've had the Heat support this long, so I'm not going to play.
That's legit.
Yeah, that's what I said. A classy way to back
Yeah,
up the
I didn't know
All-Star
if
game.
I almost kind of thought you were being sarcastic, like with a backhanded sort of thing. Like, yeah, I wish Kobe would do that shit. I guess he's not playing anyway. Cousins got his spot, but jeez.
No, I'm gonna play. I'm gonna be in there.
Oh,
I'll play with one hand.
All right, well, we'll leave it at that. Find us on the social network styles, Twitter at BISNations, Buns.
Twitch.tv/FearTheBuns, at FearTheBuns on Twitter, BisNation forums, hit us up. It's poppin'. The cast is on Stitcher and iTunes. Drop comments, drop rates. We love you for doing that.
That's actually true. I think it's about time we do another T-shirt giveaway. So we'll just keep this ongoing, and we'll choose our favorite comment, and that person will get a tee of their choice of the ones left. I'm running low on the iHeart HBs. I know that. But I think we have a decent stock of the others. So on that note, do